أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Respected Muslim brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Short introduction as usual before we begin. I've talked about this probably every time we've done a session on Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba, but it's something that just needs to be repeated every time. It needs to be repeated until we fix this problem. I call this the Imam Hassan syndrome. The Imam Hassan syndrome is that we have two Imams named Hassan, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and Imam Hassan al-Askari. Salamullah alayh. For some reason, if you are an Imam named Hassan, you are largely overshadowed by the Imam that comes after you. So Imam Hassan al-Askari, salamullah alayhi, when we look at his life, more people know about Imam Sahib al-Zaman, Ajjallah Faraj al-Sharif. More people want to discuss the polemics regarding Imam Sahib al-Zaman, Imam al-Hassan, salamullah alayhi. People only bring him up for like the peace treaty with Muawiyah, which we will do a video on. I've said it multiple times. We will do a discussion on that, inshallah. You can click here to watch that video. But when it comes to Imam al-Hassan, his imamah, same as his brother Hussein, each of them were imam for 10 years respectively. Imam al-Hassan was imam for 10 years. Imam al-Hussein was imam for 10 years. And most people don't know a lot about what was going on when he was the imam. Like, I have seen some of the Nawasib who would go so far as to say, they're like, dude, Hassan and Hussein were just sayyids. They were just noblemen, but they were not as knowledgeable as like Abu Huraira or Abdullah ibn Umar or, Ibn Abbas or any of these tabi'een. They're like, Hassan and Hussein were just people who seemed to just mooch off the fact that they were the Prophet's grandsons. But in terms of their actual knowledge, they didn't really have that much. All they were doing was claiming legitimacy to the caliphate based off their relationship with the Prophet. And this is, of course, not true. This is garbage. This is completely disrespectful and negligent to the biographies of the two respected imams. And so today's session, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba during his own imamah, some of the events narrated about him during his own imamate, during his own adult life. It's going to be stories about him and the things he would do, some of his characteristics, his personality, that sort of thing. And there's also a session you could click here to watch that video on Imam al-Hassan during the imamah of his father, his childhood, and the imamah of his father, Amir al-Muminoon. There are many awesome reports about Imam al-Hassan before his imamah, but today we're discussing the imamah of Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba. And again, the objective here is to inform. The objective here, I set out collecting these reports with the explicit intention of, I want reports that people have not heard of before. I want stuff on Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba that people have not come across before, not the same lecture you get every single year about Imam al-Hassan and he was generous, and they'll repeat the same story over and over again. No, we wanted to find stories with that have an authentic basis and that perhaps you haven't come across before, or even if you have come across it before, maybe there were some details that you didn't hear. So, but with that being said, let us begin, and we dedicate the ajr and thawab of this majlis to all of our mu'min brothers and sisters who love Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba salamullah alayhi, who maybe were deprived of the honor of visiting his grave, of visiting Jannat al-Baqiyah. So we will begin now, inshallah. So first thing I want to go over when it comes to Imam al-Hassan's his life as imam. We're not going to go over the proofs for his imamah. We'll do that. You can watch the other video in order to see that. But what we're going to begin with is his daily routine in Medina, because there is a report about Imam al-Hassan's routine that really sets the stage for who this man was. What was he doing for these 10 years in Medina? Because the misconception is that al-Hassan made a peace treaty with Muawiyah, grabbed all the money he could from the Kufa treasury, and then went back to Medina and just basically lived a life of marriage and divorce until he died, until he was assassinated. And this is not true, as we're going to set out to prove. So the first report I'm going to be showing you is in Tabaqat ibn Sa'd, volume 6, page 373. It can also be found in Ansab al-Ashraf by al-Balagri, who's, as we know, Ibn Sa'd's student. his disciple. So we know that he would have transmitted this report from his teacher. And then it's also transmitted in Tarikh Dimashq by Ibn Asakir. So this report is very, very well attested, we would say. So when it comes to the biography of Imam al-Hassan, we read that once Muawiyah asked a man from the people of Medina who belonged to Quraysh, he said, "Tell me about al-Hassan, what's he doing?" So the man replied, he said, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen," calls Muawiyah Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says he prays the morning prayer and then he sits in his designated place in the mosque until the sun rises. Imam al-Hassan would pray Salatul Fajr, right? Salat al-Subh. Then he would stay there in his mihrab and he would pray until the sun rises. After the sun has risen, he would lean back or recline, and no one of honor in the Prophet's mosque remains except that they come to him. They converse with him until it is well into the daytime. He prays 2 units of prayer, 2 rak'ah, then he stands up and he goes and greets the mothers of the Prophet's wives, and sometimes they give him gifts. Afterwards, he goes back to his house and then returns to the mosque to pray, and the people gather around him. And so, upon hearing this, Muawiyah made the following comment, and I love this quote. I love this line. It's very, very interesting. It's very powerful. Muawiyah says, "Ma nahnu ma'ahu fi shay'," or "Ma nahnu ma'a fi shay'." We cannot match him in anything. So if we were to look at the daily routine of Muawiyah, for example, or Yazid, or any of these other clowns who the Mukhalifin praise and glorify, we see that none of them come close to Imam al-Hassan. Every morning he wakes up, he prays, he sits in the mosque, he talks to people, he answers their questions, he informs them regarding the matters of the religion, and then he'll go and he'll pay his respects to the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, he will greet them, and then he may go home for a short amount of time, but then he's back in the mosque to pray, presumably a Dhuhr wal Asr, and then people gather around him again. This is funny because I once saw one of the Nawasib of Baha'u'llah said, Al-Hassan never do anything. You're like, where is he? He's supposed to be Imam. He's supposed to be transmitting knowledge. Where is he transmitting knowledge? And so we'll show you narrations of that in a second. But this sets the stage. This is Imam al-Hassan's daily routine. And just as a side note, interestingly, regarding his visiting the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, Ibn Sa'd narrates in his Tabaqat, volume 6, page 364, a narration from Imam al-Baqir. So Imam al-Baqir says something really interesting. He says that Al-Hasan wal-Hussein did not see the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. And Ibn Abbas would say that them seeing them is permissible for them. So these ladies, the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, the wives of the Prophet who were still alive at that point, who had not passed away, Imam al-Hassan, we read that he would go and he would greet them. But according to Imam al-Baqir, he would not see them. So this means he would greet them from behind a veil. He would greet them from outside a wall or from outside their homes. He would greet them and they would, greet him back. They would give him gifts. But and Ibn Abbas says that it was halal for Al-Hasan al-Hussein to see these ladies because these were the wives of their grandfather. These were considered mahram to them. But even then, Imam al-Hassan al-Hussein did not go in and see the wives of the Prophet. And this is something really, really cool because you see that al-Hassan al-Hussein, this is the level of respect they had for Rasulullah's urf, for his women, even long after he had passed away. Right? Now compare this to someone like Talha, who in the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Salamullah alayhi in Tarikh al-Tabari, when he confronts Talha in Basra, he says, "You left your own wife at home and you came here with the Prophet's wife." So this is the Akhlaq of al-Hasanain, Salamullah alayhim, with regards to the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. Now, I want to go over some of the ahadith that Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, Salamullah alayhi, narrated from his grandfather. And there are many of them, but I will only narrate a few of them, some of the more, well-known ones, some of the more important ones. It is narrated in Jami' al-Tirmidhi, which is one of the big 6, as well as in Sunan al-Nasa'i. And this hadith is transmitted in many of the primary sources, I believe, like Ibn Abi Shaybah and perhaps Abdul Razzaq, and I think also Ahmad ibn Hanbal. But I chose to quote it from these 2 sources because these are considered more authentic, more reliable. So Abu Hawra once asked Al-Hasan ibn Ali, salamullah alayhi, he asked him if he remembered any of the ahadith of his grandfather, sallallahu alayhi wa. So Al-Hasan replied, "I remember that Rasulullah said, 'Leave what makes you doubt for what does not make you doubt. The truth brings tranquility, while falsehood sows doubt.'" This is a very, very important hadith. This is a hadith that I would argue is one that we should all memorize. Right? In Arabic, da' ma yuribuk ila ma la yuribuk. Right? Leave what makes you doubt for that which does not make you doubt. Look for certainty. And so when we discuss hadith and we discuss ilm al-rijal and we discuss matan and sanad and tafsir and all of these things, that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for certainty. That is our manhaj, as taught to us by Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba salamullah alayhi, from his grandfather sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, is look for certainty. There are people today who will base their aqa'id on a single hadith from a source that comes God knows when, hundreds of years after the fact, without any chain of transmission, without any corroboration. And they will base an entire aqidah on that. And I'm sure you guys have run into these fanatics. I'm sure you've seen these people. Imam al-Hassan is telling us, like, no, don't go chasing after these doubtful matters. Hold on to what gives you certainty. Look for certainty. That is the objective when it comes to solidifying our aqa'id, solidifying our beliefs. So the next hadith we'll go over, al-Hasan al-Muthanna, the son of Imam al-Hassan, he narrated from his father al-Hasan, who narrated from his grandfather Rasulullah, he said, whoever recites Ayatul Kursi, the verse of the throne, after the obligatory prayer, they will be under the protection of Allah until the next prayer. This hadith is transmitted in al-Mu'jam al-Kabir by Tabarani, I believe in volume 3, page 85, page 2733. And al-Haythami authenticated this report in Majma' al-Zawaid. This report is very interesting. The Khalifin tried to weaken it, and my response, my refutation of that is we just don't care. Because the way they try to weaken the hadith is actually quite funny. They try to weaken the hadith because of Kathir ibn Yahya, because he was Shia. And this is actually really funny, is that the Sunnis have a lot of hadith, especially in Mu'jam al-Kabir by Tabarani, from Imam al-Hassan, but most of them will be weak by their standards because they're weakening anyone who had even the slightest bit of Shiism in them. But this is a really interesting hadith. I think this one is one that we need to try to implement in our lives, because if you haven't memorized Ayatul Kursi, you should definitely do so. Its benefits are great. And this hadith shows us that if you recite Ayatul Kursi, you are under the protection of Allah from that obligatory prayer until the next obligatory prayer. You know, if any one of us feels like, you know, our lives are difficult and things are just not going our way, recite Ayatul Kursi at the end of your obligatory salat. Right? We've talked about Tasbih al-Zahra, we've talked about many of the mustahab a'mal, but if one of you wants to revive a sunnah of Imam al-Hassan that he narrated from his grandfather Rasulullah, let him recite Ayatul Kursi after his obligatory salat. Al-Hasan ibn Ali alayhi salam also narrated, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught me some words to say in the witr and qunut. O Allah, guide me among those whom you have guided, pardon me among those you have pardoned, turn to me in friendship among those whom you have turned to in friendship, and bless me in what you have bestowed, and save me from the evil of what you have decreed. For verily you decree, and none can influence you, and he is not humiliated whom you have befriended. Blessed are you, O Lord, and exalted. And this hadith can be found in many sources. It's found in Sunan al-Nasa'i, it's found in Sunan Abi Dawud, it's found in Sunan ibn Majah, and it is found in Jami' al-Tirmidhi. And I wonder why Bukhari and Muslim didn't have it in their books. I want to read this dua in Arabic because I think it's one some of you may be familiar with, because it is also mentioned in our books of dua. So in Arabic, the dua goes, Allahumma hadini fi man hadayt, wa afini fi man afayt, wa tawallani fi man tawallayt, wa barik li fi ma a'tayt, وقني شر ما قضيت إنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل أو لا يذل من واليت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت اللهم صل على محمد. You can see from these brief examples we've given you is the idea that Imam al-Hassan just took advantage of the fact that he was descendant of Rasulullah and just got married and divorced and played no part in transmitting knowledge is just absolutely absurd. It's absolutely absurd that Imam al-Hassan absolutely transmitted the knowledge of his household, the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we see here that he's narrating directly from his grandfather Rasulullah, even though he was quite young when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. We see that he had in fact memorized some hadith from his grandfather. Now, another interesting report about Imam al-Hassan Salaamullah alayhi, and with regard to his knowledge of the tafsir of the Quran. It's one of my favorite, moments from Imam al-Hassan's life. It is narrated, and this report can be found in Tafsir al-Tabari, as well as in Tafsir al-Durr al-Manthur. And the reason why we're quoting al-Durr al-Manthur is because al-Durr al-Manthur is confirming that this report used to belong in the Tafsir book of Ibn Mardawayh. And so it's reported in Tafsir al-Tabari, volume 24, page 266 and 267. So the report says, a man asked Al-Hassan ibn Ali salamullah alayh about the verse, and by the witness and what is witnessed. So this is, I believe, in Surah Al-Buruj. Surah Al-Buruj, there is a verse that says, وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ, and by the witness and what is witnessed. So he asks Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayh, he says, can you explain to me what this verse is talking about? Who is the witness and what is being witnessed here? So Al-Hassan salamullah alayh asked him, he said, did you ask anyone before me? So the man replied, yes, I asked Ibn Umar and Ibn Zubayr, and they said the witness is the day of sacrifice, and the one who is witnessed is the day of Arafah. Others have said the day of slaughter and Friday. So Al-Hassan salamullah alayhi replied, no, rather the witness is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then he recited the verse, so how will it be when we bring from every nation a witness, and we bring you, O Muhammad, against those people as a witness? And this is, I believe, in Surah An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa, ayah 41. فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا or بِهَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. So the Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayh is telling him, it's like, no, Shahid, the witness is who? The witness here is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And this is confirmed by another verse in the Quran. It's Quran, Surah 4, ayah 41. As for mashhud, as for what is being witnessed, he says that the witnessed is the day of judgment. Then he recited, indeed, in that is a sign for those who fear the punishment of the hereafter. That is a day for which the people will be collected, and that is a day which will be witnessed. And this can be found in, and I believe the Arabic says, وَذَلِكَ أو ذَلِكَ يَوْمًا مَشْهُودًا. Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayhi, this hadith is very interesting because it demonstrates something I think that is quite humorous. So firstly, the Mukhalifin tried to weaken this report because of al-Tabari's teacher Ibn Humayd. And we say this is nonsense. Ibn Humayd was authenticated by Ibn Hanbal and Yahya ibn Ma'in. And it's no surprise because when you see the reports that Ibn Humayd transmits in Tarikh al-Tabari as well as Tafsir al-Tabari, especially the hadith of Da'wat al-Ashira, you can see why people would be eager to get rid of him. But at best, he's Hasan al-Hadith, or I'm sorry, at best, he's authentic. At worst, he's Hasan al-Hadith, because there's ikhtilaf on him. Secondly, we see here that Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayh knows the tafsir of the Quran better than Abdullah ibn Umar as well as Ibn Zubayr. We, alhamdulillah, completely dissociate from Ibn Umar and Ibn Zubayr, and we chose to follow Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayh. That is where we take our sunnah, that is where we take our tafsir of the Quran. This hadith shows you not only Imam al-Hassan's knowledge of the tafsir and his knowledge of the Quran, but it also shows you just the ignorance of his adversaries, of the people that he's being compared to, like Ibn Zubayr and Abdullah ibn Umar and these other tabi'een or these other Sahaba from that generation. They, when it comes to the tafsir of this verse, Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayh, all he did is he did tafsir of the verse using the other verses of the Quran. When we look at the life of Imam al-Hassan, something that is really interesting is we see reports that highlight his detestment of the dunya. You see that even though he was very wealthy, he was very rich, he's not a man who is very much attached to the dunya. Az-Zamakhshari records in his book Rabi' al-Abrar, he records the following lines, this poem that Imam al-Hassan used to recite. He used to say, O people of the fleeting worldly pleasures, there is no lasting stay for it. Indeed, being deluded by the shadow of the ephemeral is foolishness. Imam al-Hassan is saying this poem, he's advising the people of dunya. He says, Ya ahla ladhati dunya, la baqa'a laha, in ikhtiraran bidhillin za'il humaq. So he says that, O people of dunya, people who love this dunya, people who are attached to this dunya, indeed, these fleeting worldly pleasures, there's no lasting stay for it. It's not going to last forever. It's only temporary. Indeed, being deluded by the shadow of the ephemeral is foolishness. It's humaq, right? Being deceived by a shadow, by an illusion, by something that is only temporary is foolishness. And one of the most beautiful hadiths of Imam al-Hassan, this is my favorite, hadith of Imam al-Hassan, salamullah alayhi, my favorite quote from Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba. And I have collected so many of them, but this is one that I would like to write in gold if I were capable. I would not, as we know, for the men in Islam, it is haram for us to wear gold. For the women, it is halal. For me, I have no use for wearing gold, but I would use it to write certain hadiths. And this is one of them, because this hadith is beautiful. I would trade all the gold and the silver in the world for this beautiful quote from Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba. It is narrated that once al-Hassan ibn Ali salamullah alayh gathered his sons and the sons of his brothers, and he said to them, "O my sons and the sons of my brothers, you are still young," or the sons of my brother, "you are still young, and the time may come when you will be among the elders. So seek knowledge. Whoever among you is not able to narrate it or memorize it, then let him write it down and keep it in his house." This hadith is what directly inspired me to begin writing my book, as well as to write down as much as I can. So someone may ask, says, well, where can we find this hadith? So this hadith is recorded in a number of sources. It's located in al-Bukhari's Tarikh al-Kabir, his book of Rijal, volume 10, bio number 1200 or 12,605. It is located in Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, volume 6, page 372. And it can also be found in Musnad al-Darimi, volume 1, page 528, as well as in Tarikh Baghdad by Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, volume 7, page 441, and lastly in Tarikh al-Yaqubi by one of our great historians. So this quote of Imam al-Hassan is very well attested. It's very well recorded. And so I want to go over this for a minute. As we know, when it comes to the early development of the Sunni corpus of hadith, of Mukhalifin, they had a detestment for writing hadith down. They would mock you if you had your hadith written down. They're like, oh, you have to have it purely memorized. Imam Hassan salamullah alayhi, and this is something we see. We have hadiths of Imam Ali, Imam al-Hassan, we have our other Imams, Imam Sadiq, Imam al-Baqir, where they advise their Shia, write it down. You will not memorize it until you write it down, until you record it, until you save it up. Every single one of us should do this. There's this almost taboo about taking notes on a lecture or taking notes on a khutbah or a discussion unless it's in school. We're like, no, I only do that in school. Well, Habibi, the things you take notes on in school, like algebra and chemistry or whatever, most of that stuff that you took notes on, you don't even use anymore. When the school year is over, you throw those out. Why are you taking notes on that stuff but not taking notes on this stuff, which actually matters to you, which makes you happy, which brings you a sense of tranquility when you read it? And so we know for a fact that one of the people who took the advice of Imam al-Hassan was his nephew, Imam Zayn al-Abidin. That's how we got Sahif al-Sajjadiyah. That's how we got, Risalat al-Huquq. Is because young Imam Zayn al-Abidin salamullah alayhi heard his uncle about Muhammad al-Mujtaba alayhi salam say this, and he took it to heart. He obeyed the commandment of his Imam, and he would later succeed his uncle and his father al-Hussein salamullah alayhi as the Imam. And then the rest of his descendants did the same. So we as their Shia should do the same. When you see a hadith that you like, even if you can't write it down, do what Imam al-Hassan says. Store it someplace. Store it on to copy the link, copy the text, put it on a doc. Store it. Do not convince yourself that delaying or procrastinating this is a good idea. But again, they say Imam al-Hassan was not a scholar. Let me give you some examples of just how precise with his words Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba was. Many of you, we've discussed the khutbah that Imam al-Hassan gave after the death of his father, Amir al-Muminoon, and this highlights his eloquence. But there are some other reports that highlight the eloquence of our Imam. Here's a beautiful example. It's kind of a funny example. It's narrated from Abu Maryam al-Ansari. This hadith can be found in Al-Kaf al-Sharif in volume 6. He narrates this report back to Abu Maryam al-Ansari, who says, once al-Hassan ibn Ali salamullah alayh came out of the bathhouse and someone met him and said, I wish you have a good istihmam. So istihmam, this word, I have to explain a little bit of Arabic grammar here. At the beginning of the word, you see the word ist. So ist in Arabic refers to your buttocks, your rear end. So Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayhi said, oh Luka, why does the word ist need to be mentioned? So Imam al-Hassan is basically correcting his grammar. He's like, what are you talking about? That's not the right way to say it. So he said, I wish you a good humaim. He's saying, I wish you had a good bath. So Imam al-Hassan said to him, do you not know that humaim means perspiration? This is, I wish you a good sweating. I wish you some good perspiration. So then the poor man says, he says, may your bathhouse be nice. I wish your hammam is good. So Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayhi replied to him, if you wish me a nice bathhouse, then what is in it for me? It's like, yeah, I hope the bathhouse is good. What about me? What do I get if the bathhouse is good? You should instead say, I wish purity for what is nice of you and nicety for what is pure of you. So you see Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayhi, when it comes to his words, his precision in his words, he would correct people. It's like, no, you're better than that. You got to learn how to speak Arabic. You got to perfect your Arabic language. You can't be saying, istihmam, and you can't be saying humaim. You have to say it properly. And so these are the characteristics of a nobleman. The upper class, upper society, take pride in the fact that they speak eloquently. Imam al-Hassan was no different. The difference, though, is that Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayhi is not simply mocking this man. Imam al-Hassan is correcting this man and he's teaching him how to say it properly. I'll give you another example. And by the way, that's Thiqat al-Islam Kulaini for you. A lot of people was like, I didn't know there were hadiths on Imam al-Hassan in al-Kafi. Of course there are. I'll give you another example, also from al-Kafi Sharif. And Kulaini reports on the authority of Abu Barza al-Aslami that a child was born to Imam al-Hassan. And so Quraysh came to congratulate him. And so they said to him, congratulations to you for the birth of the Faris, for the birth of the knight. So Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba said to them, what kind of expression is this? Say, may Allah enable you to thank the benefactor for the blessed gift. May Allah make him to grow up to manhood, and may Allah give you the chance to enjoy his good deeds. This one is also narrated in volume 6 of Al-Kafi Sharif. This is really interesting because there is another report, I believe it's in the same chapter. The hadith I just quoted is hadith number 2 in the chapter, and this next hadith is hadith number 6, and the chapter is the title is Congratulations for Childbirth. How do you congratulate someone who's had a child? So in the second hadith, Imam al-Hassan explains, he says, how will you know if he will be a faris or if he will walk on or he will walk on foot? Ma alayka yakunu farisan or rajulan, right? Or infantry. Faris is a cavalier on horseback, and rajil means someone who fights on foot. Imam al-Hassan is demonstrating here that at the end of the day, you don't know what profession your child will go into. You don't know if he'll be a faris or a rajil, or he'll do this or he'll do that, right? So you shouldn't tell people, may Allah bless you with this, that your son will be this job. That's not up to you. You don't know what that person's child will end up being when they grow up. Rather, you should say, inshallah, you have the chance to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, he makes you proud. Inshallah, Allah gives you the chance to enjoy his good deeds. This is how precise Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba is with his words. Now, let's talk about Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba's generosity. And this is perhaps his most famous attribute. Imam al-Hassan is very well known for his generosity, to the point where people call him Kareem Ahlul Bayt. Say all of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, all of our Imams are generous. All of them are Kareem. All of them are Kareem. But Imam al-Hassan was just really famous for it. And I'll show you a few examples to show you why. Firstly, before I give them to you, I want to remind you, we covered this in our bio of Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha, that famous hadith which he transmits from his mother Fatima, Ad-jar thumma ad-dar. You think of your neighbors, then you think of your own home. When you have an upbringing like that, what's that going to lead to? Correct? If that's the home he grew up in, what's he going to turn out like when he becomes an adult? So Imam al-Hassan salamullah alayhi is narrated from Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq salamullah alayhi. He says, a man went to Uthman ibn Affan while he was sitting at the door of the mosque, and he begged for 5 dirhams. He also asked Uthman to guide him towards benevolent people. Uthman pointed to a corner of the mosque where Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, and Abdullah ibn Ja'far Tayyar were sitting. The man went to them and greeted them and begged of them. So Al-Hassanain alayhim salam told him, "O so-and-so, it is not permitted to beg for one unless it's for one of 3 reasons. You're not supposed to beg others for money unless you have one of 3 issues. 1, a large amount of blood money. You have a big diya on your head. You owe a lot of blood money. That's, in that case, it's permissible. Number 2, heavy debt. If you have a really heavy debt. Or number 3, extreme poverty. Why are you begging? So the man said it is for one of these reasons. Then al-Hassan salamullahi alayhi donated 50 dinars. Before I can read the rest of the hadith, notice how Ahlul Bayt in Iraq, people of Iraq, we have a phrase called my wajh. You preserve the my wajh of someone. When it comes to generosity, generosity is not when someone asks you for a favor, you gloat about it. You're like, so you've come to me. Look how the mighty have fallen. Oh no, look at you, peasant. You need money. Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein told him, it's like, sir, you should only beg for one of these 3 reasons. That's the only case in which you should do this to yourself. You have to come to others for money. So why are you here? He said it's one of the 3 reasons. Al-Hassanain didn't even ask him which one it was. And they began donating money to him. And so Imam al-Hassan, salamullahi alayhi, gave him 50 dinars. Al-Hussein, salamullahi alayhi, gave him 49 dinars. And Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar gave him 48 dinars. Remember, Uthman, he only asked Uthman for 5 dirhams. Al-Hassanain, salamullahi alayhim, they gave him 50, 49, and 48. The man left, and he went back to Uthman. And so Uthman asked him, well, what did you do? So the man said, I begged of you, but you gave me only a little bit, but did not ask me what I needed that for. However, when I begged of one of those long-haired people, he asked me what I was asking them for. He told me that it is not permitted to ask unless it was for one of 3 reasons. I told him my reason, and he gave me 50 dinars. The second man gave me 49 dinars, and the third man gave me 48 dinars. Then Uthman said, where else could you find people like them? They have cut off all knowledge and have gathered all good and wisdom for themselves. فَطَمُوا الْعِلْمَ فَطْمًا. And this report was transmitted by Shaykhuna al-Saduq in his Kitab al-Khisal. And I would like to comment, I say Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein's advice to that man regarding like the situations where you are allowed to ask for money is more valuable than the money they gave him. Because that man would spend that money. He would eventually spend all that money. But he'll remember that. He says it to Uthman. He's like, I learned something from them. These people cared about me. They didn't just throw some money at me and tell me to be off on my way. Another hadith regarding Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba's generosity, and I love this hadith so much. This hadith is so beautiful. It is narrated from Sa'id ibn Abdul Aziz that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam heard a man praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him 10,000 dirhams. So al-Hassan left and sent 10,000 dirhams to him. And this report has been transmitted in Tarikh Dimashq by Ibn Asakir in volume 13 in his bio of Imam al-Hassan, as well as in Ibn al-Jawzi's book, Sifatul Safwa. I want to comment on this hadith. This hadith is very interesting. I wonder to this day, because people don't just ask for like, Ya Allah, give me $1 million. No one does that seriously. He's like, Ya Allah, grant me X amount of money. Ya Allah, grant me 10,000 dirhams. When this man was doing this, did he know Imam al-Hassan was nearby? Did he know that if al-Hassan ibn Ali hears me making this dua, he will absolutely grant my request? Imam al-Hassan heard this man praying. He's like, Ya Allah, give me 10,000. Imam al-Hassan goes home and sends that man 10,000 dirhams. Absolutely incredible. He wanted to be the one through whom Allah answered this man's dua. Another hadith that is narrated is what is narrated by al-Khatib al-Baghdadi in his book Tarikh Baghdad in the 6th volume, page 32 to 33. He narrates that once Imam al-Hassan, salamullahi alayh, he was passing through some of the basatin, some of the farmhouses, some of the properties in Medina. And he saw a black man with a piece of bread in his hand. And he was eating a morsel and feeding a piece to a dog until he shared all of the bread with it. Al-Hassan asked him, what prompted you to share with him without holding back anything? The man replied, I felt ashamed before his eyes to withhold from him. Al-Hassan asked him, who are you? He said, I am the servant of Aban ibn Uthman. I'm the slave of Aban ibn Uthman ibn Affan. Al-Hassan then asked, and this wall, this hayat, hayat, by the way, back in the day when they refer to hayat, they're referring to the property, right? The property that is enclosed by the wall. He said, this is also the property of Aban ibn Uthman. So Al-Hassan salamullahi alayhi said, I have made an agreement with you, and I won't cease until I return to you. So he left and he purchased both the servant and the wall. And he came to the servant and said, O servant, I have bought you. I purchased you from your master, Aban ibn Uthman. So the servant stood up and said, As-sam'u wa-ta'a are for Allah and His Messenger and for you, my master. And so al-Hassan said, I have also bought the property, and I set you free fi sabilillah. And the wall, this property, is a gift from me to you. And so the servant replied, O my master, I have also given away the property to the one you gifted me to. Like, you set me free, fi sabilillah, I donate this property, fi sabilillah. What an amazing report about Imam al-Mujtaba, salamullahi alayhi. He sees a slave sitting on the side of the road feeding a dog. And he's so impressed by his akhlaq. He's like, it breaks my heart to see this poor creature, this poor animal. I'm ashamed when his eyes meet mine. For this act of kindness, Imam al-Hassan purchased this man and gave him his freedom, and then purchased the property he was working on and gave it to him. Who does that? Who's generous like this man? Al-Hassan, salamullah alayhi, one of the most... So you see, when it comes to Imam al-Hassan, people, many of you may have heard these stories before, how generous he is with his money, how generous he is with property. He's freeing slaves, he's giving away land, he's giving away thousands of dirhams and dinars. But one of my favorite reports about Imam al-Hassan in Mujtaba is regarding his generosity with his food. There's something really interesting about this. So it is narrated by Abu al-Aswad. He narrates that once a group of people from Kufa entered upon al-Hassan ibn Ali, salamullah alayhi, while he was eating. So they greeted him and they sat down. And al-Hassan said to them, food is easier, that people should swear upon it. Food is not, food in ahwan. It's not that valuable that you should swear at people to come eat with you. So when you enter someone's house and he offers you food, eat from his food without waiting for him to say, come eat. Food is set out to be eaten. Wallah al-Alim, if I had time, if it weren't for the fact that I want to keep the majlis focused on Imam al-Hassan, there are reports about Muawiyah, the way when he would invite people to his palace and they would eat, the way he would stare at them. There's a famous report about a child who once came to eat at Muawiyah's palace, and the entire time Muawiyah was watching him eat. And his father was like, why is he staring at my son like that? As in, you are the ruler of the entire Islamic empire, and you are jealous of the way this child is eating? Imam al-Hassan is saying, come eat with me. Don't make me swear at you. I swear by Allah, you must come eat with me. And this report is transmitted in Ibn Abi Dunya, his book Makarim al-Akhlaq, in page 274, hadith 431. And it has been narrated without the full context by Ibn Sirin in Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, volume 6, page 368. Another report that is narrated regarding his, or actually to wrap up this report. So the narrator, Ibn al-Aswad, says, they came forward and they ate with him. And afterwards they presented their needs to him and he fulfilled them. So not only did he invite them to eat with him, he asked them, what do you guys need? Is there anything I can do for you? And so he gave them, he fulfilled their needs. Another report that we have, Abu Harun narrates a story regarding the way Imam al-Hassan would treat his guests. He says, we set out as pilgrims and we entered al-Medina. So we said, let's go visit al-Hassan, the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and greet him. Let's just go, while we're on Hajj, let's stop by Imam al-Hassan's house. Let's greet him and see how he's doing. So we went to him and spoke to him about our journey and our conditions. When we left his place, he sent to each one of us 400 dirhams, 400 dirhams. Each one of us got 400 dirhams, a gift from Imam al-Hassan. We said, we are wealthy and we have no need for this. He replied, do not refuse my kindness. So we returned to him and informed him about our situation once again. He said, do not refuse my kindness. If I were not in this situation, this would be very little for you, and I shall give you more. Al-Hassan is like, if I wasn't in this situation, if this ummah had made me the Khalifa, the rightful, ruler, if they had recognized the position that Allah had given me, you think 400 is all I would give you? Allah Jalla wa Ala boasts to his angels. Imam al-Hassan said, and I shall give you more. I shall give you something more. On top of the money, I'll give you something else. And he narrates this hadith Qudsi. Allah Jalla wa Ala boasts to his angels about his servants on the day of Arafah. And he says, my servants have come to me disheveled and covered in dust, seeking my mercy. I bear witness that I have forgiven their doers of good and interceded for their wrongdoers. And the same applies on Friday. Imam al-Hassan is like, I'm not just going to give you money. I'm going to give you something more valuable than money. I'm going to give you hadith. And this story has been narrated in Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad in volume 6, page 381. It is also reported that he was greatly attentive to the people who needed his help, such that he would even leave his i'tikaf and tawaf. Imam al-Hassan, if he was doing i'tikaf is where you set yourself aside from everyone else to focus on worship. And his tawaf is your circuits around the Kaaba. People would come up to Imam al-Hassan while he was doing i'tikaf or while he was doing tawaf, and they would ask him for assistance. It is narrated that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam would refer to a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, according to which he who fulfills the need of a believer is like the one who worships Allah for years. And this report is transmitted by Ibn Asakir in his chapter on Imam al-Hassan's biography. He also narrates an interesting story, and we will conclude with this, inshallah. It is narrated on the authority of Imam al-Baqir, salamullah alayhi. He says, a man came to al-Husayn ibn Ali, and he asked him for help, while Imam al-Husayn was mu'takif. So he said, if it weren't for me doing i'tikaf, I would have helped you. And we don't say this is stinginess on Imam al-Husayn's part. It's Imam al-Husayn saying, I'm not going to help you while the Imam is here. If you want something, you go to my Imam, you go to al-Hasan salamullah alayhi. ثم خرج من عنده, he left him, so he went to al-Hasan. And so he mentioned the issue that he had with al-Hasan salamullah alayhi. So he went and helped him. So he said, indeed, the man says to Imam al-Hassan, he says, I was embarrassed, I was ashamed of asking you for help after I asked al-Husayn first. So al-Hassan said, لَقَضَاء حَاجَةْ أَخْلِي فِي اللَّهِ أَحَبَّ إِلَيْ مِنْ اعْتِكَافِ شَهْرٍ. Imam al-Hassan says, helping one of my Muslim brothers is more valuable to me than doing i'tikaf for 1 month. Another hadith, and this one is on the page right after, this is narrated by Abu Hamza al-Thumali, and so the Mukhalifeen have weakened this report because of Abu Hamza al-Thumali, but we recognize its value from Imamuna Ali ibn al-Husayn, salamullahi alayhi. So Imam Sajjad, he narrates this about his uncle al-Hassan. He says, al-Hassan salamullahi alayhi went out doing tawaf around the Kaaba. So a man said to him, he came up to him, he said, Ya Aba Muhammad, idhab ma'i fi hajati ila fulan. He's like, oh Abu Muhammad, come help me with my issue. I have an issue with fulan. So Imam al-Hassan left the tawaf and he went with him. The men, they resolved their issue. So he said, one of the people who saw Imam al-Hassan leave the tawaf and go with him, one of the people went up to him. This man went up to him and said, Ya Aba Muhammad, tarakta al-tawaf wa dhahabta ma'a fulan ila hajatih. He said, oh Aba Muhammad, you left the tawaf to help this man? So Al-Hasan salamullah alayhi, he says, وَكَيْفَ لَا أَذْهَبُ مَعَهُ. How could I not go with him? وَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ قال من ذهب في حاجة أخيه مسلم فقضيت حاجته كتب له حج وعمرة وإن لم تقضي له كتب له عمرة. So Imam al-Hassan narrates from Rasulullah, he says, whoever goes to help one of his brothers, one of his Muslim brothers, with one of his issues, he has a hajjah, he has a need, it is written for him as a hajj and a umrah, if he is successful in fulfilling that need. And if he is unsuccessful, then he gets the reward of a umrah. فَقَدْ اكْتَسَبْتُ حَجَّ وَعُمْرَةً وَرَجَعْتُ إِلَى طَوَافِي. He says, so I have done hajj and umrah, and now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the tawaf. Correct? And this concludes our chapter on Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba's generosity. And inshallah, tomorrow we will discuss his outstanding manners and his etiquette. And we will end this majlis with Surah Al-Fatiha. تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.